Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am preparing to leave for Blizzcon, and I'm in fact in the midst of doing what I do when I leave for trips like this, where the channel's going to be sort of like I'm not here for the next 7 days or so, and the stream's going to be bad. And it's quite a stressful time for content creators, of course, because there's lots of stuff going to be happening, particularly with BlizzCon coming, where you would like to make content and make videos and things like that, and people want your opinion on them, and I want to talk about these things, but I'm unable to do so because I'm there. But at the same time, I'm there and I'm meeting all BlizzCon for me, despite the recent controversies, is all about meeting people, especially the American guys, because I live in Manchester, England, and so I can't get to see a lot of the US guys. They can't really make it to PreachCon, despite the huge amount of people from the US and Australia who do come to PreachCon, which is amazing. Obviously, I can meet much more of them at BlizzCon and also meet with friends and other content creators that typically I don't get to be around physically. We talk online, we talk through chat rooms and things like that. So for those of you who are going to BlizzCon, I will be around. I'll be everywhere. I tend not to tie myself to work-related events. I think I will be doing something with a couple of content creators before BlizzCon, but I'll announce more when I'm confirmed to be there. But other than that, I'll be around the con. Please come and say hello. That's why I'm there. I'm not there for what Blizzard's going to announce. If I cared about that stuff, I'd stay at home, watch it, and make videos and things like that. I'm there to meet you guys. So pay attention to Twitter particularly. Typically, I'll be in the Hilton Bar in the evenings. If you're coming out or you're alone, this was a big thing the last couple of BlizzCons, is people who'd come to BlizzCon on their own and were not sure what to do in the evenings, come down to the Hilton. I'll be there. Just come and say hi. And usually we get a group of people who spend most of the night just chilling, meeting each other, and we all have a shared interest. So you'll typically meet friends and stuff there. So please come and do that. One of the things I do try and get done before I go away is prepare as much content to go out on the channel as possible, so that everything seems relatively normal from a viewer's experience, right? Because for a lot of viewers, it doesn't matter that I'm not here. They just want to watch some videos and things. But while I was browsing things, because what I wanted to do was gauge what the current community feeling is about a lot of things before I got to BlizzCon, because there's a chance I'll get some one-to-one time with Ian Hazacostas. We have found out today that they are allowing some interviews to take place, which is a bit of a surprise. I haven't heard anything about me specifically yet. That's still up in the air as far as I'm concerned, but for them it might be just like, no. That's definitely a possibility. But one thing I did want to do is gauge what's happening around the community. And it brought me to the point where it's like I could make like 9 or 10 different videos about all the things I learned today to tackle and try and correct, or to try and throw my voice into the mix to a lot of the discussion that's happening with the game. And it's to the point where it's like it really is kind of worth a ramble, which is what this will be. So if you're not interested in that, then fair enough, turn away. But this is kind of a lot of my thoughts on the current state of the game, things I'm hoping to see. We're likely to see the new expansion at BlizzCon, or some announcement of the new expansion, and all the little things that people are hoping are going to happen. I'm confident in saying BFA has been the worst expansion Blizzard's ever released for World of Warcraft. I think it's been the least successful financially for them, based on the fact that maybe things like the Dreadwake and these 6-month subscription things and all the amount of in-game store items, which you've definitely seen ramp up. Not that they didn't have in-game store items for a long time, but they've definitely ramped up over the course of BFA. So financially, maybe it's okay. It feels like it's not, but we don't know. We don't have any metrics, but at least that's my take on it anyway. I feel comfortable with that position. And exactly what is Blizzard going to do to try and turn this around, which is probably, obviously, from a business standpoint, what they want to do. Or are they going to try and double down on Classic, or all these kinds of things? So the big one recently has been loot. And I'm not going to go in the direction you probably think I'm going to go here. A lot of people were pissed off that I wasn't more angry at the corrupted loot system. A lot of people expected me to be outraged and furious at the corrupted loot system, and I was surprised at myself that I wasn't. And I reflected on it a little bit and kind of came to the conclusion that it's because I didn't really expect anything better. Sure, I had hopes, certainly after the time I've invested in Classic and how much fun I've had there chasing specific items, the joy of receiving that specific item, knowing that I set a goal, I went for it, I completed that goal, I could tick it off my list, and then running down a list of self-made goals that the game didn't require of me, and then investing far more time into doing that than I have into BFA, and hoping that something like that would happen. The lack of outrage from the corrupted system was basically like, when I saw it, I was like, meh, probably, that's where they're going with it. And that was kind of the limit of it. It was more of a kind of, yeah, sure. Because I'm not surprised anymore over BFA when systems are announced that I just kind of think, well, that's not very good. And that's it. And I move on from it from there. It's not a lack of passion. It's more it's expected at this point. It's not surprising. And if you think back, and again, we don't want to get rose-tinted about this, and I looked back through my catalogue from when BFA was launched, is the outrage and furious anger that I had a lot of the decisions Blizzard made coming into BFA and how they tried to change them very, very quickly. And over the course of the expansion, we've seen rapid changes put into place eventually once they finally realized that we were very unhappy with what they were doing, is that they tried to course correct severely several times. So you can imagine they had a straight line plan of BFA, but it ended up going like all over the place while they tried to steer the ship in a direction that made some sort of sense, while the rest of us were, as far as I'm concerned, clearly seeing this storm in the distance and going, you're riding into a storm, like turn the fucking ship around at least. Right, we're going to have a bad time here. While we even saw some doubling down of comments. I specifically remember the Azerite one early in BFA where people were crying out when Azerite armor was a real rarity, like the good stuff. And we were like, can we please have some other source of this armor rather than praying to the loot rolls to get something good and repeatedly not getting anything good? Like, this doesn't feel good. It feels terrible. Like, this isn't fun. This isn't interesting. This isn't an RPG. It's just hoping and praying due to limited restrictions. And then they posted, in fact, we're probably going to double down on how hard it is to get good Azerite. And reading that post and having like the joy sucked out of me is like, are they not seeing what we're seeing as players? And certainly I can look back at my own catalogue, which I would never change, and you can see from day one of BFA, we were talking about class pruning. It's like, these classes don't feel good. We're covered in RNG procs and all these kinds of things. So when the corrupted system was announced, I was kind of like, whatever. It's another forced grind, which I could have predicted. If I was to guess what the new Titanforge system would have actually been, not what I would have hoped it would be, I would have said it's probably a required grind, it's probably RNG, and there's probably more pitfalls than there are benefits to it, and probably it's really complicated, which is kind of where I'm going with this little tale here. Reading through the general forums and MMOChamp and Reddit and all these kinds of things and reading through the discussions, what we have is the same thing that we kind of saw when Master Loot was removed, which is a lot of people who, quite frankly, don't understand how a lot of the systems in the game actually work. But they think they know how it works based on what they see, which is fine and it's totally fair. But a lot of that doesn't come down to the specific system. Like, if you come away from it, what we're actually seeing here, or at least what I'm seeing after reading through all these pages and pages of things today, is a lot of people who are yearning or hoping for just a simpler way of things being. I see a lot of people crying out, it's like, can we not just have standard loot drop? And the reality of what I'm seeing, especially with the people who are incorrect, so there's a lot of people who are upset that Warforged and Titanforge is being removed because they're casual players. So this is catering to the raiders. You've got the raiders explaining like, no, although it's a higher item level, in fact, because of these corrupted procs, we'll probably want to wear lower level gear for a while until we get that specific mystical piece of gear. So it doesn't work that way either. So all these different elements are crashing together. While simultaneously people like myself and Blizzard are having to make these videos or long posts to try and explain this yet again brand new system that is coming into the game, which is needlessly complicated. And what I see overall, if I take a step back and drop away the specific arguments of where it's focused right now, be it corrupted gear, be it Master Looter, be it gear swapping and Mythic Plus, be it all these elements, what I'm actually seeing is a lot of players who can't keep up with how many different systems, complicated, overly compact, really unnecessary baggage, almost bureaucratic systems that keep coming into the game on like a quarterly process at this point. And everything they knew 3 months ago makes no sense 3 months later. And then 3 months after that, everything they relearned then has gone and changed again. And everything is really complicated because we keep bringing in all these brand new systems. And every expansion, they have this insane idea of not iterating on the game, keeping it simple but looking for small, minor ways of improving, but instead dropping entire systems and then bringing in a whole bunch of new systems to replace them. So that means that players who played in Warlords of Draenor and even played in Legion come into BFA, for example, and are like, I don't know what's going on. And in fact, by the time I've learned that, it's probably changed again. And there's another big system added on top of it in order to... It feels like it gives the illusion of some sort of depth to the system. Or whatever, whichever system it is. I'm not specifically talking about loot here. I'm talking about just how the game works. Some depth to the system. Like, it feels like it has depth now because it requires a video. It requires a third-party resource. It requires a massive blog by Blizzard. It requires the feedback of hundreds of thousands of people in order to get it to where it's a workable state. And what I see is people just being like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of it. I just wish it was simple. I wish it was just a simple system. The biggest question I want to ask about my World of Warcraft characters, what are my best stats? What's the best trinkets? You know, things like that. And they should be able to work most of that out in-game. So if I play like a poison... If I go into a talent tree that's heavily focused on poisons for a rogue, then the stat that gives me more poison damage should be the best. That's about as complicated as I want it to be to get 90% of my character's stuff together. Right? That's all I need it to be, which kind of takes me back to around Mists of Pandaria, where it just came down to how you played that character. Like, building the character and gearing it, you could look at an item and say, oh, that has a lot of mastery on it. That's a good stat. I know I'm wearing a good belt. Whereas, certainly now, we're deep into having third-party websites that a lot of people, including myself, physically pay for outside of the game in order to figure out if gear's good. And that means that the system doesn't work. Like, if that's where we're at, the system clearly doesn't work. And it's a bad system. The yearning for simplicity seems to be widespread, although it's not being said out loud. So perhaps I'm reading too much into this, but when I see these posts of people saying, no, it works like this. Hold on a minute. No, it doesn't. It works like this. And it could be referencing PvP, raid lockouts, anything. And they're having to like go into big diatribes, which is what I've read today, of people trying desperately to explain to one another how something works, yet they're all conflicting information. And it clearly says to me, is like, we've gone way too far. If I was to do, say, a strategy guide for World of Warcraft, like a written, published strategy guide, let's say I made it for Legion, I would have to go into daily quests and then into legendaries and how the legendaries work and how the combinations of them work, and then the upgrade quests to increase the legendaries, how to wear 2 legendary quests, how then to mix them with the Warforged Titan Forging system, and I'd have to explain items like the Arcano Crystal. Why is this so powerful despite the fact it was an item first in the game, even if it doesn't Warforge or Titan Forge? How does that work? How does Warforged and Titan Forging work? Well, it works one way with certain items. With weapons, it works slightly differently. Gem slots, this is how they work. This is how much they're worth, which I guarantee a lot of people listening to this right now aren't exactly sure how much a gem slot is worth. It's obscene. So this changes how much item level is relevant to the item you just got, even though it seemingly has the best stats. A worse item with bad stats, but a gem slot could actually be better for you by a significant margin. If you did get a Warforge or Titan Forge, it could work this way. Then comes the Nether Crucible. Nether Crucible is slightly different, so you're going to have choices there, but each of them have different weights. It's not particularly clear which one is better because they're random procs. It doesn't tell you how often they proc, so you can't even do some simple math to figure that out. And then you have all this stuff, and that's just for Legion. You come into BFA, practically none of those systems exist anymore. Now I have to explain to you the Azerite system. Warforging and Titan Forging remains. Now that works the same way. But now we don't have armor slots in 3 of our armor slots. Now we have Azerite armor. By the way, they can't Warforge or Titan Forge. They now fall into specific bandings. They walk into bandings that you work that way. On top of them, there's about 250 to 300 traits that could be on these items, yet only 1 or 2 of them are significant. So let's look through those. Now you haven't got those 2 items. So which is those 2 traits on there? So how do they then work coinciding with that? On top of that, we've now got the essence system. You've got a choice of about 20 essences that you can probably implant into your neck. You have to achieve them by going through this system to do that. Okay, do that. Now you've got a good set of gear. However, we've implemented a system called the benthic system. The benthic system might have lower item level, yet it carries these procs. How powerful are they just by reading them? Can't really tell you, but we can mathematically work it out using a website. The website tells us actually that these items are significantly better what you could get that by defeating the last boss on Mythic difficulty, one of the hardest bosses ever created, and the loot that drops from there isn't as good as these braces you can craft from doing world questing. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does. How do you acquire those? Well, that's a daily grind of farming pearls. Pearls is going to be a good thing. However, what you want to do is then build on alts. You want to use your alts to get pearls, to buy items, to send to your main character, so you can use the pearls over there to increase the power of these items here. However, don't increase the one even though you found the correct benthic slot, because there might be a belt that you really want, but there's 3 or 4 belts. You want to wait till you get the specific belt that has a proc that's a gem slot. Once you got that one, that's the one you want to upgrade. Don't upgrade any of the other ones. That's a waste of time. Keep sending pearls from alts in order to figure that out. By the way, on top of that, we've now increased a corruption system. The corruption system goes on top of all those other systems. So we want to increase that as well by managing how much corruption. Now, this gear that you're going to get that's an upgrade for you is actually going to debuff your character and give you some sort of negative effect. A lot of people seem fine with the fact that this gear is going to be permanently debuffing their characters. I don't know why, I don't understand it either, but they seem perfectly fine that their new gear is actually negatively, in fact, impacting them in some way. Now you have a corruption value. Now you can choose how much corruption you want to go on top of that, but there are some items that reduce the corruption, meaning you can micromanage that. There are going to be static values for how much corruption is on per item, but it's still an RNG roll as whether it's going to be a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 corruption level that's on that item. And I know some of the people listening right now aren't even aware that this system exists because it's only just been iterated upon. Then you're going to be able to use your cape. Now your cape says sanity, but it's going to now be just crossed out and say sanity and corruption because they couldn't figure a way of doing it the other way. It's most likely going to be still tied to AP in some way, so you want to keep grinding your Azerite power. How can you get Azerite power? You have to do specific content that you vastly out level and out gear. And then that's where we're at. And all of those things are very real that I just talked about. All of those things are very, very real. And you can imagine the guide being like this thick to bear all this in mind. So even if people have played World of Warcraft for 15 years or whatever, like me, or however long the game's been out, it's like, I don't know what's good anymore. I don't know what's good anymore because each system that seems to be developed for the game has this illusion of depth, which ultimately comes down to I need to find the answer mathematically. Because I can't figure it out for myself. I simply can't anymore. I can't figure it out for myself. It's too complex. The whole system is so convoluted and so much busyness is involved with it that it actually just ends up like annoying you to the point where you just throw it all away. Like, I have no interest in this stuff. And I think that's ultimately where a lot of people are. We talked about connection to character and connection to items. I know I feel a lot more love for the bow that I got from Diamall in Classic than I do for any item that I have in retail right now. And the reason is the items don't matter to me anymore. Their names, what they do is kind of irrelevant. Ultimately, because of the nature of the system, I have to end up plugging it into a third-party website, which is easily, and rightfully so, a step too far for a lot of people. They don't want to be doing that. They certainly don't want to sit in a queue to work out what items they should be wearing, should they not be prepared, and again, rightfully so, to pay for the privilege of figuring out whether their items are any good. And this goes across the board. Coming into BlizzCon and seeing the state of the game and seeing a lot of people who... And we seem to have had that issue. I talked about this a little while ago, is that a lot of people have left WoW, and the voices seem to have gone away. And I've seen some people making the conclusion that a lot of the really outspoken people about BFA seem to have gone away. And drawing from that conclusion that things must be better now. Which I fundamentally disagree with, because let's say during Wrath of the Lich King we had this enormous group of people, yet a change was made that upset some of them. They got angry about it, but the change went through. Those people left, so the voices that remained either agreed with that system or didn't mind it enough to quit. Then another change was made, say over Cataclysm. These guys didn't like it, so the group gets smaller and smaller. And what we've seen over BFA is people getting really outraged about a lot of the BFA stuff, especially for the first, say, half of BFA, and eventually have quit, as we've seen many people go to Final Fantasy XIV, many people are playing different games, at least I see that throughout most of my community. And ultimately the guys that are left are either okay with the current system, or... So what we have left are people who are either okay with the system or not enough for them to quit. And the amount of voices gets smaller and smaller. So we can some people could draw the conclusions like, oh, they must have fixed the problem because these people aren't outraged anymore. And the answer is, in my opinion, no, that's not the case. They didn't fix the problem, but the people who it was too much for them have left, and their voices are now gone. And what you're left with is an ever decreasing amount of people who are more upset about whatever change comes next. Certainly, I read an astronomical amount of feedback. Despite the fact that corrupted gear, I believe, should be a hotter topic than it is. If I was to compare it to, say, Vulpera animations, it's not even in the same league as the amount of feedback for that. A lot of people who are very heavily focused on cosmetics and cosmetics only. When it comes to major gameplay changes like the new Mythic Plus affix and things like that, response is actually really low comparative to what it would have been, say, Mists of Pandaria time, which is when a lot of people were looking at challenge modes and raiding and things like that. And in fact, the circle seems so small now that the guys who are left are the guys who are more detached from gameplay than ever before, which is a really bad situation to be in unless you want your game to essentially become The Sims. Now, I want to be clear on this. I have no issue with the guys who are really interested in the cosmetic elements of the game. In fact, it's an area I wish they would push much further. But you can't just have a game where the gameplay is just disappearing and eroding and disappearing, which is where we're at right now, at least in my opinion, because ultimately these guys are going to be left farming transmog in older content, and new content is really irrelevant because these guys aren't really going to touch it until it becomes older content. So you're essentially, and we do know this happens, and I have members of my community who don't do the current expansion at all. They don't do it. What they do, the way they play World of Warcraft, is they do the previous expansion with the new level cap. So they will buy BFA, they will level to 120, and then they'll start playing Legion. That's how they work their game. They do daily quests in the current expansion to get very powerful gear, well beyond their means, and then they go and do previous content and they get transmog and stuff from that, and that's how they play the game now, and we seem to have an increasing amount of people doing that. When it comes to what I'm hoping for BlizzCon, it's not a specific change, and that's what a lot of people come to me with, is like, what specific change would you like? So like Master Looter, would you like that to be changed? Would you change anything about the Benthic corrupted Titanforge system? Would you change anything about this specific system? And my answer now wouldn't be that. My answer would be just be simplicity. The systems need to be simple, because we don't need all this bloat. We talked about button bloat. Well, if you compare it to the systems bloat that's in place, and the amount of confusion in the community this is causing is really obscene. You can read through pretty much any post about any subject, and the amount of misinformation in there that's being spread, not being maliciously. I want to be clear on that. It's not malicious misinformation. It's simply a case of things change so rapidly and so vastly that people just can't keep up. So the knowledge they had 3 months ago, as far as they're concerned, should be pretty up to date. It's only 3 months old. Yet it is out of date because of the nature of the game and how much it changes on an expansion by expansion basis. And certainly if they ever intend to bring back people of old, the millions of players who we do know now after the Classic launch are around and are very much alive and able to play video games, we kind of need to go back to a time when the game was fucking obvious to understand from the start. Where it's simple to understand, where systems didn't need like, hey, I've just got this thing. What do I do with it? Okay, let me go into my diatribe again about how this system works. And then, okay, there's another system in place. I've just unlocked this thing. What does this do? Which one of these do I want? Do I need to go farm honor now for some reason? Well, I don't like PvP. But I have to go and do that now? Yeah, but they made it easier because they chopped and changed it. So it's a little bit simpler now. But yes, ultimately, you still need to go and do this content. It's like, well, I don't want to. It's like, well, chores are the name of the game. And that's what I'm hoping to see realistically from the next expansion. Isn't the setting, because a lot of people ask me, like, what about the Shadowlands? What about this and that? And I was really happy to see the Reddit thread that compiled all the leaks into how many different expansions. Was it 30 plus? There are apparently going to be 30 plus WoW expansions based on all the fanfiction leaks that were revealed over the last few months about what the next expansion will be. I don't care really about the setting. If it's a good setting, I'm happy. Sure, I'm happy. But what I care about is the gameplay. That's why I play the game, to enjoy the gameplay. And that's what I'm hoping to see, is a real simplicity added to it. A nice set-in-stone system that you should be able to pretty much understand by just looking and reading the tooltips of your character. You should be able to figure out where to go and do things and how your character works based on looking at your character. It shouldn't take more than that. It really shouldn't take people like me. I can be here to expand upon it and show you the finer details. And I would also say that we shouldn't need specialists writing massive in-depth guides on a very regular basis, because each patch pretty much changes how classes work, which in and of itself, we've not even talked about that in this little ramble of mine, is obscene. Is that every time a new 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.4, 0.5, whatever it might be that comes out, needs a new big blog post in order to explain the changes that have come with your character, as we're seeing come up to here. Balancing always happens. That's fine, right? Some classes are going to get buffed, some classes are going to get nerfed. Yet what we have seen is, and it's kind of a byproduct of having so many systems on each character, that a minor change at the fundamental level, like a slight buff of a certain spell, well, that rocks into changing your Azerite and how that works, because you're now more focused on a different spell. And that then stampedes into your gemming and your enchanting choices, because you're now focused on a spell that works differently. And now you're going to have to change your corruption, because maybe it's not crit damage you want. Maybe you want more haste now. And it filters down through all these systems, right? So you put this sort of droplet in the top, which is like, oh, monks might need a slight buff to, say, Renewing Mist or Soothing Mist. And it just goes ping. And the ripple effect is like a casino machine when you put the coin in the top and it just goes, and out the bottom pours all this stuff from this one simple coin that you put in the top. And how it reverberates through the entire system upon system upon system upon system that's currently in place. Meaning that each patch, simple little buffs and nerfs, have dramatic effects on characters to the point where people just suddenly find themselves like, oh, I've got to like re-enchant, I need to swap all my essences, I need to rethink my talent choices, I need to rethink how I'm focusing my gearing efforts going forward. In fact, my entire stat weights have changed, and all this has happened because they just went, oh, monks should heal a bit more, you know? Things along those lines is what shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening, right? That shouldn't be the way it goes. It's like, I need different Azurite armor now. I need to rethink my gemming. I need to suddenly go to the auction house and just buy a load of shit because it's all changed. And I see increasingly, certainly when I talk to ex-players of World of Warcraft, that this is increasingly becoming a problem. And we could talk about the daily chores, and I know I spoke about it recently in a video, is how many people are so tired of, like, I have a couple of hours to play a night. I don't either 50% or 100% of that time taken up by doing my daily chores in order to keep up. I would rather it be I log in and do something I want to do. And I know there'll be people that's like, well, just do that. But the reality of the situation is, certainly in early game, if you don't log in and start farming reputation for Champions of Azeroth or Honorbound, or to get your AP levels up so you can actually use your Azurite armor, if you don't log in, do daily quests, world quests, and island expeditions and things that you might not enjoy with that limited time you have to play, then you're just falling further and further behind. And you very quickly end up in the scenario I know many of you did, which is where you're getting Azurite armor that just doesn't work. It's just, you can't activate anything on it. Or you're just unable to unlock the heart. Or you're hoping for some catch-up quest to eventually arrive, and until then you've got some sort of scuffed character that's rolling around with you, and all these kind of things. And you want your neck upgrade, but I literally just have to do daily quests over and over again. But I don't want to do that with my time. I want to rock some BGs. I want to do a couple of dungeons with my friends. Maybe I want to dedicate a night to raiding, but what I can't do is do a night of raiding, add a couple of hours in order to do the preparation. That is another big problem that I hope goes away. So that's where I'm at going into BlizzCon. A little bit of a ramble there and a lot of things. It's not really specific and to the point like most videos that I do, which is like, this is the focus of this video. It's more a general feeling of looking around at just how many people are utterly confused with a lot of the things that have changed in the game. And then when you really think about it, it's like every single expansion and every single patch changes quite a lot of things or adds a brand new system. And players just like, I haven't got all day to sit and read forums, and I shouldn't have to. I haven't got all day to keep a day-to-day, up-to-date log of every change that Blizzard makes and read in detail these massive, lengthy posts. Or watch every single video that somebody puts out from whoever, and watch streams. I can't dedicate 7-8 hours of my hours of the day to trying to keep up with everything that's happening in WoW. I want it to be nice and simple. And if I do have time to ask a question, I want someone to explain it to me in a very simple way. So that's one of the big things that I'm hoping for out of the next expansion, and certainly hoping that BlizzCon reveals something along that side with that. One of the biggest horrors I could see of the new expansion is them announcing again what I would really not like to see on the stage when BlizzCon or whenever they announce the next expansion, if it is at BlizzCon or somewhere else, is that they go, and now we have a brand new system because we're taking away Azurite armor. Now we've got artificial Azurite system, which now involves these specific items that you're going to be able to go and farm, and you'll need to do this, but we've time gated it. And, you know, just come up with another ludicrous system to replace the current system. What I'd like to see is we're going to simplify this shit. We're going to simplify it down. That's what we're going to do. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.